Marriage Sunday at Church of the King. You guys excited? Question for the guys. How many of you guys have just nailed it all weekend long? Like you're batting 1,000? You had the weekend planned. Friday was great. Saturday, you planned that thing out 2 weeks ago. Everything's awesome. Yeah? How many? Yeah? How many of your wives would agree with you? Ladies? All right. We got some hands. Good job, guys. Okay. It doesn't matter if you came in this morning on a hot streak or if you are have been striking out all weekend. You are in the right place. You're doing it right because you're here today. It's Marriage Sunday. Why Marriage Sunday? Because it's February. It's the month of love. Romance is in the air. It's on everybody's minds. And yet we live in a world that increasingly hates what God designed sex and romance for, which is marriage. For decades now, the institution of marriage has been under attack. It has been chipped away at, mocked, and redefined, and dismantled, and treated as optional. We've been taught that marriage is oppressive, that fatherhood is toxic, that motherhood is limiting, that men and women are interchangeable, that sex is casual, that children are a burden, that desire is everything, and that a love that lasts is unrealistic. And if that wasn't bad enough, we were told we now know the answer to all these problems. Birth control is going to free us. No-fault divorce is going to protect us. The sexual revolution is going to liberate us. Redefining marriage is going to improve it. We were told everything our ancestors believed about marriage was outdated and oppressive and naive. That the old ways were foolish. The old ways built stable families. And stable families built stable communities. And stable communities built, Western civilization. We rejected all that wisdom. So how's that been working out for us? Well, who cares? I heard the Dow was up 50,000. Right? Who cares? No big deal, right? The world might not be run by a ring of demon-worshipping pedophiles, but the Dow's over 50,000, right? We've sown the wind, and we're reaping the whirlwind. More loneliness than ever, more depression, more fatherlessness, more relational instability, more confusion about identity, more anxiety about commitment, less trust, less permanence, less joy. We were promised freedom, and instead we got chains. Here's the truth. God made marriage. Not the church, not the state, not tradition. God himself. And he made it for our good as a gift, as a shelter from the storms of life, for companionship.
As a covenant, not as a contract. And he loved marriage so much, he gave us an entire book of the Bible about it, a book about sex, romance, desire, conflict, endurance. It's a book that's 3,000 years old, written in an ancient patriarchal society, and yet somehow it presents a vision of love that is more mutual, more joyful, more playful, more sexy, more honest, more free than anything the modern world's produced. The book is the Song of Songs. We've been studying it together as a church for the last 7 weeks, and today we come to the end. But before we get there, I want to ask a question. I want you to think about something. I want you to think about the marriages that you really admire, that you've admired over the course of your life. Not like the Instagram ones or the celebrity ones. I want you to think about the people you truly admire, the couples who made it. The cute old couple you looked at when you were young and said, man, I hope we're like that someday. Who comes to mind for you? Is it your parents? Your grandparents? Hopefully somebody in your family, but maybe not, right? Picture them. What was it about them that moved you, that moves you still? Is it their great chemistry? It's not. I mean, they have it, right? It's sort of inevitable. But it's not their chemistry, it's their endurance. It's the commitment. It's the fact that you know when you look at them, just by looking at them, they're a couple who's walked through life, the real stuff, the hard stuff, and somehow they managed to come out still holding hands. My grandparents grew up in the Great Depression. My grandfather's dad died when he was young. He and my grandmother were together, and they got married, and instead of starting a small, simple life together, what they did was they stepped into responsibility. They raised his sisters. They took care of his mom until she died. Then they took care of her mom. And then later in life, my grandfather began to lose his health, diabetes and strokes. Eventually, he went blind. And my grandmother took care of him until the day he died. And I remember being in college, and I would come home, and sometimes I'd go to church with them and sit next to them. I always thought they were cute because they'd stand really close together and sort of lean into each other. And I just thought that was a cute, sweet thing for a while. But at a certain point, I realized what was actually happening. My grandmother would, because my grandfather was blind, she would be reading the next line of the song to him so that he could sing. He couldn't see the hymnal anymore. They fought through a lot of hard and a lot of responsibility and a lot of heartache and a lot of life. And they were there for their parents and their siblings and their kids and their grandkids when they needed them most. And most of all, they were there for each other. They made it to the end hand in hand, stronger, leaning on each other. You're here because that's what you want, right? Because life is hard. Life wears on you. It takes more out of you than you expect. It asks more of you than you planned for. How many of you have made it through life so far with zero disappointment? Zero loss. Zero seasons where the road felt longer than it should. The longer you live, the more you realize life's not a sprint, it's a walk, and it's a long one. And some stretches are beautiful, and some are fun, and some are sweet. And some are exhausting, and some are boring, and some are frightening, and some feel endless. And what most of us discover sooner or later is that the hardest part of life isn't the terrain, it's the idea of walking it alone. And that's what God made marriage for. In the beginning, God made Adam and looked at him, Adam, the original bachelor, and said, "It's not good that man should be alone." And we all know that's true, right? Like, have you ever set foot in a bachelor pad? I was a college pastor at Indiana University. Like, my job was to spend time going into whatever the horror of a bachelor's pad had for me. And so you go in, you got a TV mounted too high, maybe a single folding chair, a mattress on the floor. You open the fridge and there's like leftover pizza and half a bottle of ketchup. It's not good that man should be alone, right? We need help. We need companionship. Not just romance or chemistry, but something that can last. A kind of companionship that doesn't vanish the moment things get hard or panic when life stops being easy. The kind that can shoulder weight and absorb disappointment and forgive wounds and keep walking. That's what we want. Whether we're married or single, young or old, hopeful or cynical, we want someone to walk with us. Someone who knows us and still stays and doesn't let go when the road gets tough. And that's what gives marriage its meaning. Because it's not just about attraction or romance or sex, it's about endurance. That's why we make vows to each other. It's two people looking each other in the eyes and saying, whatever comes next, you're not going to face it alone. We're going to face it together. And that's also why when marriages fail, pain's so deep. It's not just the loss of love or feeling, it's a loss of shared ground, shared memory. All those moments that you can never get back that should be wonderful, but they're now complicated. They're hard to cherish. It's the death of a future that you had dreamed about and depended on. It's a betrayal so deep that many never recover from it. And that's also why when you do see a couple that's been married for 40 or 50 years and they still lean on each other, it does something to you. Because it's not just impressive, it's rare. You see them walking together slowly, maybe holding hands, sitting together, and you think, man, they did it. They made it. There's no way I can possibly know everything that couple has been through. The only thing I know is they didn't get here on accident. There were arguments and fights, misunderstandings, maybe even betrayals. There have been moments when it would have been easier to quit, years where love had to be chosen more than felt, times where the only thing holding it together was just forgiveness. Yet there they are together. So then how many of you look at something like that, think, yeah, well, that just doesn't happen very much anymore. I want it, maybe more than anything. Or maybe you had it, or thought you did and it blew up in your face. Or maybe you do have it, but cost a lot to get there. You had to start over. Here's what I want you to know this morning. God understands all of that. better than you do. He understands the longing. He understands what marriage is made for because he made it for us. So this morning we're going to turn to a book of the Bible called the Song of Songs, the book exclusively about sex and love and romance and marriage. We've been studying it together and we come to the end today. We're in the final chapter. So we start in chapter 8. We begin in verse 5 with a question. Who is that coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? So there's the image. And I want you to picture it. Two lovers hand in hand, emerging from the desert, from the wilderness. Throughout this book, we've seen a lot of landscape. But what kind of landscape has it been? It's been all gardens and fields and orchards and vineyards. It's been springtime scenes with flocks grazing, blossoms on the vine, full of fruit and life and wells and springs. It is quite literally a picture of paradise. It is straight from the Garden of Eden. And then suddenly here at the end, we see this couple coming up from the wilderness together. What's going on here? Well, in Scripture, the wilderness is a place of judgment and trial and testing. It's a place of thorns and thistles, a place of blood and sweat and tears. Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden and sent by God into the wilderness. Israel spent 40 years wandering through the wilderness. David, Elijah, John the Baptist, they all spent years in the wilderness. Jesus himself was tested and tempted in the wilderness for 40 days. The wilderness is where God transforms us. It's where illusions disappear. It's where pride is exposed. It's where dependence is learned. And it's where faith is proven. So why are they coming up from the wilderness? Why now, at the end of this book, are they coming up from the wilderness? Here's my answer. It was there the whole time. The whole time. All of our lives are lived east of Eden in the wilderness. They have been walking through the wilderness this whole time. They didn't bypass it. They didn't go around it. They went through it. It's just that in the middle of the wilderness of this life, they had each other. Their love, their marriage was the oasis in the desert. It was their refuge in the midst of trial. It was their joy in the midst of pain. It was the place where they drew sustenance and strength during lean times and where they found life in the midst of death. Which isn't to say that marriage was easy. Gardens don't exist by accident, right? Ask a farmer. Someone has to clear the ground, plant the seeds, build the walls, pull the weeds, protect what's fragile when it grows. Gardens take work. Fruit takes time. Growth needs to be guided, and small threats and compromises threaten to ruin everything. Love and marriage and romance are the same way. They take work. But the best things in life do. Nothing good comes easy. And love, like a vineyard, exists in a world where damage is possible and you can't wreck it. But if we have faith for the work, what we find is that God designed marriage not to be escape from the heart of life, but a refuge in the middle of it, an oasis in the desert, if we cultivate and protect it. Life's going to test you. It's going to come at you hard. And one of the great lies of the modern world is that we can somehow have our cake and eat it too. We can have intimacy without cost, pleasure without patience, sex without consequence, love without permanence. Everything's just going to be easy. That's not the way it works. So here's this couple in this book, this song, this album we've been studying. And as you go through it from start to finish, what you see is the emotional arc of their relationship, from attraction to springtime love, through fear to the altar, on the honeymoon, through fights, with lots of lovemaking and desire and intimacy and fun along the way. And now at the end, we see them coming up from the wilderness together. What are we supposed to see and feel? Relief. They made it. They came up from the wilderness. They endured. They were tested, they were exposed, and they survived. And they didn't come out untouched. They came out leaning. Who is that coming up from the wilderness leaning on her lover? She's not dragging him. He's not carrying her. They're both walking side by side, and she's leaning. It's not love at the beginning of the journey, it's love at the other side. The road has taken more out of them than either one of them expected. They didn't make it out untouched or unscarred, but they did make it out together. They saw better and worse. And instead of leaning away, they leaned in. They saw richer and poor, and they didn't lean away, they leaned in. They saw sickness and health. They never walked away, they leaned in. They endured. So then, from here, from this vantage point, our girl then begins to look back. She begins to reflect on where they started, how far they came, what she's learned, and what's still left for them. She turns to her lover and says, "Under the apple tree I awakened you. There your mother was in labor with you. There she who bore you was in labor." This is just a very poetic way of saying, hey, let's go back to the beginning. Places have meaning and they're symbolic. How many of you remember the house that you grew up in? Is it still in the family? How many of you can say your parents grew up there too? Not many. 1, 2. It's a gift. That's a gift. We live in a weird time. We buy and sell houses. We don't have family estates that are passed down like that anymore. It's not that same sense of permanence and family legacy for us that's been for past generations. But in this time and place, you would have likely grown up in the house your parents grew up in, and maybe your grandparents too. Maybe their parents before them. And the houses and the trees would have witnessed multiple generations of love and lovers. The orchards and the gardens and the vineyards would have borne witness to generations of lovers on walks, holding hands, arguing, making up, laughing, playing. So she recalls the apple tree. It's symbolic. It means something. It's been there longer than they have. It's a witness. Not just to when their love awakened beneath its branches, but to his parents before him, and maybe their parents before that. The trees watch generations come and go, and what she's saying is, here we are. Looks like we made it. Another link in the chain, another branch on the family tree. Part of a story that stretches back long before either of us were born, and it's going to continue long after we're gone. And that tree, that apple tree, seen some beautiful things. It's seen young love and first kisses, fights and reconciliations, babies carried home, maybe coffins carried away. Who knows what it'll see next? Young love lives in the present. It's urgent, it's intense, like the whole world has never seen love until now. But mature love looks backward and forward at the same time. It sees itself in relationship to everything that's come before and everything that's going to come after. Let's take a minute. Fill it in with your own version. What is it for you? Playground where you took walks? Swing on the porch? Park bench? Gravel driveway under the stars? Maybe it was the same swing your parents sat on and leaned on each other and watched the sunset and fell in love. This is the feeling. Man, we didn't even know what we were doing. We were just kids. And yet somehow that seed that got planted in this place grew. It put down roots. It weathered storms. It became something strong enough to lean on. And it won't be long. We're going to be forgotten. And maybe that tree will be the only thing that remembers us. That's okay. We're just like everybody else who's ever walked this path before us. We're the legacy of what they built, and what we built will live on in our children. That's our legacy. And that is its own kind of beautiful, and that's where we're at. That's where her heart is. And that leads to the first real reflection on love itself in the song. Our girl's still singing, she's still reflecting. Now she's about to tell us what the wilderness has taught her. This is her testimony. This is what she's learned about love over a lifetime. She says to her man, "Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised." I think Mark Twain once said that analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. It dies in the process. Same thing can be said about beautiful poetry. If you over-explain it, you can drain the life right out of it. It's the type of beauty you just want to live with for a minute and not kill. So I don't want to dissect it to death. Live with it for a second. But there are a couple of things that we need to see. First, understand these lines don't come at the beginning of the song. That's on purpose. They come at the end. They come after the wilderness. They come after the testing. They come after love has been proven. In other words, they're not cheap sentiments. Every one of these words is earned. Sometimes I think we try to skip the process and claim victory before we've endured anything. We want a love that is strong as death on day 3 of marriage. We want many waters cannot quench it before the first real test. Young love needs humility or it's going to be humbled. Because life is hard, and so is marriage, because you're a sinner married to a sinner. And it doesn't matter how smart or insightful you are or how many books you've read, some types of growth can't be rushed. Some paths to maturity are winding and they take as long as they take. She's learned that. So when she says, set me as a seal, it's not poetry from a girl who's naive. It is the wisdom of a woman who has walked through the fire. A seal meant ownership and permanence and protection. A seal on the heart is to say, I want to own your heart. And a seal on the arm is to say, I'm taken. I want all of you in private and I want the world to know it in public. Lock it in. Then she says, love is strong as death. The thing about death is it is irresistible. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't retreat, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't give up, it claims what it comes for, and you cannot escape it. She says, love, real love is like that. Not because it destroys, but because it stays. Not because it kills, but because it's relentless. This love has already died 1,000 deaths. They've had to face down pride and selfishness, fighting for the last word, unrealistic expectations, scorekeeping. They've had to face down pain and grief and sorrow together. They've buried parents. They may have buried children. They've been through the fire. They've walked through the wilderness, and they have suffered, and they have paid for it, and they are still standing. And so there is nothing left for death to take from them. This love is not going anywhere. It stands in the face of whatever comes. Then the image sharpens. Jealousy is as fierce as the grave. Jealousy is not always wrong. In marriage, jealousy is not insecurity. It's loyalty. It's the utter refusal to tolerate a rival. That's a good thing. There will be no one who comes between us. No one else gets what we have. No one else gets what's only for us. No one gets this seat, this access, this intimacy, this heart. And then the fire. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Love is a fire that cannot be quenched. You can bury it at the bottom of a sea, drown it in a river, and it still burns. It's something that God ignites. It's something God himself maintains. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. The waters will come. Illness, disappointment, financial strain, aging bodies, misunderstandings, grief, pain, and loss. Floods rise. But covenant love, when it is tended and protected and sealed, keeps burning. And then the final verdict. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. Love cannot be bought. Not with money, not with power, not with status, not with grand gestures. You can't purchase what can only be produced by sacrifice. You can't buy what can only be created through endurance. You cannot pay for what only God can give. Love is not a transaction. It's a vow, a covenant, fanned into flame by God himself as two people endure the heart of life together. Sealed on the heart, sealed on the arm. No. This is where you think the book would end, right? Love is strong as death. Many waters cannot quench it. Feels like the exclamation point. The end, period, over. But that's not where the song ends. And that's not accidental. After love has been named strong as death and unquenchable as fire, we get another memory. We have a little sister and she has no breasts. What shall we do for our sister on the day when she is spoken for? If she is a wall, we will build on her a battlement of silver. But if she is a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. This is the voice of this girl's brothers, talking from the deep past. Earlier in the song, we're told that they made her work the vineyards. They guarded her closely. They kept an eye on her. They were very protective. Now we understand why. They were afraid. She was young and beautiful. They were afraid she would be a door. The desire would make her vulnerable, that she wouldn't be able to protect herself. Men would come and go. So they tried to manage and control her. And now this is her response to that, looking back over all of it, answering from the far side of the wilderness. I was a wall. My breasts were like towers. Then I was in his eyes as one who finds peace. In other words, I knew who I was. I guarded what mattered. I was not careless. I was not for sale. I was not a door. I was a wall, no matter what you or anybody else thought. And now I am vindicated. It's almost defiant, but it's not defiance, it's strength. She's saying, man, I'm glad we didn't listen. I would have given up the peace that I found in my lover. And then the frame widens a little bit more. Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Harmon. He let out the vineyard to keepers. Each one was to bring for its fruit 1,000 pieces of silver. My vineyard, my very own, is before me. You, O Solomon, may have the 1,000, and the keepers of the fruit 200. Here's the thing. Solomon knew vineyards and wealth and abundance. He knew what could be bought. And by the end of his life, he also knew what could not be bought. You can build systems. You can scale pleasure. You can gather wives and silver and influence and status. But you cannot buy what only God can give. There is no shortcut to what can only be formed through years of sacrifice, years of pain and suffering, disappointment and forgiveness, perseverance and endurance. This love has passed through the wilderness, and it is not for sale. So Solomon puts this line in our girl's mouth: keep your money, Solomon, keep it. You can have the silver, you can have the vineyards, you can have the empire, you can have it all. I have something better. I have a love that passed through the wilderness of life and endured. So then, after everything, after the wilderness, after the remembering, after the sealing, after the quiet wisdom of years, our man breaks in and speaks one last time. O you who dwell in the gardens with companions listening for your voice, let me hear it. See, so imagine them. Not young anymore, but old. Not untouched or unscarred, but still sweet. He calls to his bride, and she responds one last time. Make haste, my beloved. Be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices. In other words, come here, come play. After all these years, I still choose you. You're still the one. So you see what happened. We don't end with a warning. We don't end with a lecture. We don't end with a moral of the story or even with a great line about love being stronger than death. We end with a couple at the far end of life still playing, still laughing, still reaching for each other. He still loves the mountains. She knows it and revels in it. It reminds me of a story a friend of mine likes to tell about his dad when he was in the hospital dying. He was there visiting, and his dad's laying in the bed, and he caught his dad slide his foot out of the bed and tried to lift up the dress of his wife, and she slapped his leg. Oh, you stop it. I don't know if his dad realized his son was there in the moment, but it stuck with him as one of his favorite memories of his parents, a precious thing for him. Because in the middle of pain, in the shadow of death, his mom and dad were still playing. They'd been through it all. They'd walked through the wilderness. They'd faced illness and fear and loss, and their love was still alive. This life is a wilderness with pain and suffering, and in the end, death. But love, the covenant love of marriage, is an oasis in the desert. It's a place where joy can survive whatever life throws at it. where laughter carries forgiveness, where desire is safe. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. It never ends, and it is in fact stronger than death. There's a day coming when there will be no such thing as hope anymore, because there will be nothing left to hope for, because Jesus will fulfill all of his promises. And there is a day coming when there will be no such thing as faith, because our faith will become sight. And there is a day coming when there will be no such thing as death, because death will die and will be forever swallowed up with life. And then only one thing will remain. And that one thing is love. Love will endure forever. We brought death into this world, but God is love, and he is undefeated. Jesus secured the victory by coming to save his bride, by suffering and dying in her place, and raising her up to life eternal with him. He has defeated all of his enemies and hers. He rose from the grave triumphant over sin and death and hell, and history is moving quickly to the day when he makes all things right. And marriage is about that story. That's why creation begins with marriage in the Garden of Eden, and why it ends with the marriage feast of the Lamb in the garden city of God. And from now until then, in the midst of the wilderness that is life, in marriage, God gives us a taste of the joy of heaven, of paradise, of a fire that won't burn out and that no flood can quench. A place where two people who have endured everything else can laugh in the face of life and play in the face of death. But you have to endure. You have to fight to the end. You have to hold fast to your vows and cultivate your love and desire for one another. You have to work through fear and rejection with grace and forgiveness. You have to learn to lean. The goal's not perfection, right? That's impossible. The goal is perseverance. It's coming up from the wilderness, still holding hands, still laughing, still leaning, still in love. So lean in. That's it. Lean in whatever comes. Let's pray.